Good evening and welcome to your Tuesday edition, I had to think what day it was there, of this Books podcast with myself, Ian Mitchell, and my good friend Hef. Hef, how are you? First of all, mate, you all right?
I am very well, very well. I'm actually strangely looking forward to a three games in the same week. As somebody who doesn't get to many of the away games because of having children, etc., then it's good to get to the three home games. So quietly confident as well that it could be 3 wins on the trot. So
Wow,
yeah,
that's starting off bold, but we'll get into that more. As you said, we'll look into the Braga game, a little bit in Falkirk as well, obviously, in terms of who plays in which game, who plays both kind of thing. But obviously, big news of last day or two has been the departure of Kevin Thelwell and Patrick Stewart. We had a podcast on here yesterday with Craig and the two Tommies talking about the reaction, the thoughts, the surprise, I guess, because no one, I think, saw it coming until the news started filtering through an hour or two before for ourselves. But Hef, just straight into that, what was your thoughts in terms of, maybe not those two, because I'm pretty sure everyone's kind of starting to speak to death of how bad a job they've done, but we'll touch on it a little bit. But did it take you by surprise? Is it uplifting news? You said there you're looking forward to the game, and yes, they don't affect on the pitch stuff as such, but the vibe about the club's got to be lifted a bit from that, surely, right?
yeah, definitely. I think when we had kind of heard about the rumblings of something going on. Obviously, we were just told be prepared for big news type thing of certain individuals, and when it came to it, I was like, I wonder if we've maybe brought someone in as a free agent, or if maybe we've got something sorted that way, or maybe we've announced out of the blue that after Danny Rule saying about the coaching situation that maybe
Yep.
a big name has kind of came through the woodwork that initially wasn't up for it or the numbers weren't right. To then have that, I was like, whoa, like. But again, what's your take on it? Because in my head, I would think that the situation is something that is. I know that the rumours going about is that Danny Rule provided a dossier of each individual player, and that is what kind of made them make that decision. That seems a stretch for me for them to so quickly trust their judgment on that alone. I think obviously it's been a mix of that plus an addition of potentially the element that Kavanagh and McGatt have came in and said, we'll hire the manager this time round and see if we can do a better job. And within such a short space of time, they've seen enough to say, right, listen, clearly the role that you provide at this club isn't relevant at this club, and therefore you need to be gone. But I don't know what the ins and outs of it are, but it would strike me that it's some sort of combination of the two. But in terms of how it's going to make Thursday feel, I think you're going to hear a lot of excited fans knowing that they're not going to have the banners up. They're not going to have all the negativity. It'll just be positive. Not so much positive about what's on the pitch, but at least making all the focus about what's on the pitch and not deviating from the what it is that they're actually seeing in front of them.
Yeah, look at that Roma game. It's a perfect example. Like, I can't remember too much about that game as such, other than some terrible defending at the back post. But if you look at that game, what I'm thinking of is the halftime banners and if you remember, the police and the stewards try to fight the fans to get the banners away, rip them down, and had them back. That was the drama of the night, and I feel like Thursday night could have seen that exact same thing because the Europa games haven't been good so far. The atmosphere's been a bit shaky from the start, and you just know that toxic thing is coming. And again, we'll look into these two. And I want to do it a little bit differently because everyone's been talking about Thelwell and Stewart as a package. And I think it's important to look into the fact that neither of them done their own job well. So if we start with Kevin Thelwell, and this is a guy that through the podcast and doing sort of fan media stuff, getting to go to some press conferences, some manager unveilings, of which there's been 2 within a very short space of time. Kevin Thelwell was there, he was present, and man to man, I actually think he's a nice guy. He speaks very well. I think he had decent intentions. This is where I get cancelled for the podcast, clearly. But I think he was trying to do the right thing. He just done some terrible decisions in terms of who he was bringing in, both on the pitch and off the pitch, it has to be said. But at least he sort of came out and spoke about it, done the fan interviews. He put himself forward. He was at that big sleep out thing last week, for example, just trying to kind of build some relationship, trying to explain himself. He just was bad at his job. But I think that's one thing to look at. And again, we can look at a bit more detail what he's done wrong. With Patrick Stewart, I just think he was never suited for this club and for the role that he was in. He wasn't fit for purpose. He didn't strike any sort of authority. And this is the guy who's running the club like day to day. Also, we've got owners who are in America trying to trust these guys to run things. And Patrick Stewart in particular, everything falls under him, whether it's the academy, whether it's the women's game, whether it's on the pitch, off the pitch, the canteen, the training, all this stuff he is technically in charge of. He gets the final say on. And again, a few people have used this line, but what has he made better in a full year? I was taking some notes here because it's exactly a year to the day that he got announced to be coming in. Obviously started in December, but a year to the day he got announced, and just a few bullet points I've noted down here, how he backed Clement and then sacked him a week later. He sacked him too late, obviously, after the Queen Park debacle. The players and Russell Martin wanted that kitman back in that we had for years. Patrick Stewart seems to have turned that down. The kit launch sales, the hospitality's not sold out. I touched on the academy already. Hiring Russell Martin in the first place and then continuing to back him for so long. The statement after the Old Firm game was an absolute farce as well. There's so many things here. And I was trying to think, okay, I can try and balance this. Is there anything good? Other than maybe helping with the takeover at the very start, I don't know how much of a part he played there. For me, again, both of them had to go a sense, but him especially just didn't suit this club whatsoever, didn't he?
No, and I actually think you're right in what you're saying is Thelwell's personality probably does suit the club in that response of someone that's willing to go and kind of break that barrier and go and join in with the fan engagement opportunities and be around the media and be open. Because even when you saw it, was it Braga away, and the fans were over approaching Stewart and Thelwell in the hotel reception, and Thelwell was standing there saying, "No, we know it's not good enough for that as well." Like, at least he was being open and honest about it. Sorry, I'm trying to dodge this light that's going to perforate the back of my baldy head. No, but even at that time, you've got Thelwell looking good, whilst Stewart was almost like the kind of the good cop, bad cop situation. And
for me, his line that night as well, it was something like, "Well, who would you have brought in?" Like, what is that?
You just go, "Well, that's your job. Like, that is your job." It's the same argument that we've had for years as, "Oh, Clement's not doing well enough domestically, or Clement's through the league away. Well, who else would you bring in?" And you go, "Well, that's not the option. The option isn't, let's just keep the person who's performing poorly because we can't possibly think of another person. There's got to be other candidates out there." And I don't know whether or not Kavanagh is maybe of the opinion that when he's taken over the role, and then obviously Stewart has, I actually didn't realise it was a year today, but I was like, I actually think he came in around this time last year. I wouldn't have put it to the exact date, but when you think at that point in time we didn't have someone necessarily in that position that Thelwell was doing. Obviously, we had people who were sporting directors before, but it seemed as if Thelwell was open to suggesting that he was wanting to take on a lot more responsibility than potentially other ones have. Now, obviously, I'm losing. Who was it that we had under Gerrard again? Ross Wilson.
Ross Wilson, yes.
So Ross Wilson was probably the last one for me. Obviously, that we had other people in between, but Ross Wilson for me was the one who was most vocal in the media since Thelwell, and again came across as a perfectly kind of open, approachable guy. But when you're dealing with agents and when you're dealing with players on a day in, day out basis, and your job is basically to be like a kind of car salesman for Rangers to say that we are the best product, come and play with us, you're going to be good at like communicating. You're going to be good at convincing other people to come and join your club. So it doesn't surprise me that someone in his position is a likeable and approachable guy on the surface. What worries me is that, like what I've said a million times before about other situations, is is that the Thelwell that's the performance? Like, what is he actually like on a day-to-day basis? Is the version that we are seeing of Thelwell the one that he wants us to see? And no one will really know that until someone comes out and just says, do you know what? You were right the first time. He actually was a decent guy. It was just that he got those signings wrong and he couldn't really claw it back for there. What strikes me strange is the fact that we've got rid of them both at the same time. Now, I watched a wee clip and David Edgar, Heart and Hand, was saying that he's unsure of a time when that's ever happened again at another club where they've managed to get rid of both, which makes me think that there's maybe been more of a partnership there as a collective than it being just one or the other. So I get your point, Ian, about who did what and how that's important. But the fact that he sacked them both would suggest that Thelwell said, oh no, I back Stewart. I think he's really good. I think he's doing exactly what we need. And Stewart said the same about Thelwell, and it's just been like, well, do you know what, guys? This isn't going to work then. Like, because
I think it's just a statement more than anything. So Andrew Carver is obviously a guy with, not disrespect him in any way because it's not his game, but I don't think he's a football-minded person at all. I'm sure he's admitted that himself. So he has to hire people to fill that void and to run the club, like I touched on at the start. I get the impression he's done this as a bit of a statement because he's obviously seen the banners, seen the protests, and maybe thought, well, we'll get rid of Russell Martin and then it'll be fine. The toxic levels will go down, everyone will be happy again. Clearly that wasn't the case from the get-go, and that Roma game was sort of the tip of the iceberg, I think, maybe in a few ways. And again, timing doesn't really make sense because there wasn't much against Livingston. It's not as if those banners and stuff, I don't remember seeing any for the first game in a while, maybe, which is
no, they did have a lot of banners. I sit behind them almost, so like there's a lot of banners with a lot of words. They've clearly been busy over the international break, but there seemed to be a lot of banners about words. I couldn't have told you if any of them were about Stewart and Thelwell at the time, but obviously where you were up in the gantry, you would have had a better view of that. So, no, I know it's the hostility of it just in general. Like, I don't really care how bad you are at your job or what it is that you've done, albeit they're wasting the club and they're wasting the time of the people who are spending their money day in, day out to support the club. And I totally appreciate that, but something just doesn't sit right with me when you see people who are part of the club with like targets on their heads and stuff like that. I just think I don't think it's a...
We've got enough people from the outside who can do stuff like that, and people hate us in Scotland, obviously. It's just the norm, so we can't hate ourselves. So I think that's a big part of why they've been let go, to be honest.
And I get the idea of like sack them, and I see the message that was put up with the kind of the subway signs at either side of it, like this is our livelihood, or this isn't just that. Like that message. I'm obviously paraphrasing. I can't remember exactly what it said, but it was like this is our life's kind of message. I get that because that's not. It's that next level that's making it kind of like I hated it when them across the road were doing effigies and all that sort of stuff, like that sort of pattern, like to do with that. I just think it goes a step beyond. So it had to be dealt with, like regardless of whether it was now or in a month's time or whatever. I know that we're talking about timing, but it might just be as simple as, like as you said, Kavanagh's maybe thought, well, do you know what? I actually employed this guy. And do you know what? He's doing better. He's already picking up far more points. Yeah. I had said in my head, by this point, if we have got X amount of points, I will have proved that I can do a better job than these guys. Therefore, I'll give it to this point. And if I'm proved right, they're not needed at this club. Why are we wasting 500 grand for a year's salary on some guy who's actually not really doing what's fit for purpose? And why are we paying the guy X amount of money to buy players when the players he's buying are absolutely dross and worse than what we already had?
And not someone we can trust to spend any more in January, obviously. I think that's key to this as well. But 5 weeks until that transfer window opens, sorry. He couldn't have spent another penny. Because this is the thing, any signing that he brought in, could have brought in Messi, Ronaldo, whatever. People would say, oh, it's a Thelwell signing, so, he's going to be straight. Straight off the bat, before he's even kicked a ball, he'd been written off. And you can see why.
Yeah, it's not fair. And it's not fair on the player coming in either. No. I actually feel sorry now I feel sorry anyway, but I feel sorry for the signing of Chermiti because we've obviously wasted money on him, so I feel sorry because we need to watch him. But the other side of it is that I feel sorry because, like everybody said, the price tag's not his fault. You know, like
Yeah.
somebody has said he's worth that amount of money. Obviously, Thelwell or he tried to throw Dan Purdy under the bus with his statement.
You would, to be fair, wouldn't you? You'd
Yeah,
absolutely. Oh, it wasn't me. There was that guy over there.
car's on fire. Just throw everything out the window as you're going. No, but I feel sorry for him because now it's like what, as you said, 5 weeks to the first transfer window, and you're already looking at trying to get him out on loan to try and claw back some of that money. I mean, it's pitiful. And if you're putting in £20 million of your money as your first investment, and I know that not all of that goes on the transfers and stuff, I get that, but when you're doing that and that's the return that you get, and not only that, but the problems with the squad are then flowing into the ticket sales, the kit sales, everything else that's any sort of event that they're putting on probably isn't going to sell out.
Rangers fans are. See, if we're top of the league at any point, every kit is sold out, every event is sold out, hospitality is sold out. There's not a seat to be had at Ibrox. It's obviously fact. And then, as you say, if you're not winning the games, that's having an adverse effect. And if you're not winning the games, you have to say, well, why are we not winning? Oh, because the squad's garbage. Oh, why is it terrible? It just leads. It's a very obvious sacking, really. It's just, like we said, the timing did catch us all a little bit by surprise. There was a couple of comments here which are looking at replacements. I don't know if you saw the tweet today. There's one or two tweets going about that Barry Ferguson is going to be linked to this job. I don't see how that makes any sense at all, personally.
What one?
For the sporting director one. At this point, it may as well be. No, again, I think I saw someone sort of talk about how, well, they've went down one way of getting people who don't know Rangers and don't understand it. Maybe they'll go the complete opposite and bring in like Mr. Rangers. There was the comment here from Blue Electric saying Barry's being touted. I got another one just a minute before that from Robert Binney about Souness possibly being an option. Again, it's a very hard role to try and pick someone from. More than likely it's going to come very left field. But for you, I'm not expecting a name as such, but what kind of profile at least should we be targeting for? I think we'll stick to sporting director because CEO, it's a really hard. It could be someone from outside of football that comes into that. Yeah. God knows who that's going to be. But sporting director,
Kavanagh might bring in his own guys. You know, like he might have someone because it doesn't need to be a football expert. Like because you look at Patrick Stewart, he had a role at Manchester United, and therefore that made him a probable candidate because big club, you get it. It could work. Let's try it out. But equally, you just need someone to run it as an appropriate business to turn a profit and see gaps in the market and capitalise on it. So maybe somebody coming in with a set of fresh eyes. Ideally not Barry Ferguson for the CEO role. I think that would raise some eyebrows in the boardroom. But no, in terms of the sporting director role, I think it would be an opportunity missed if we didn't go for someone who wasn't in a position. It's hard for me to think about. I said at the time when Davy Weir was made vacant from his role, and I was saying we should do everything that we can to get him back in some sort of capacity. I don't really care how, because you think of the club that he was part of, and you think of the network of players that he's probably seen and had access to. That, I mean, I think that would have been a really good asset to have behind the scenes in the club. But I don't necessarily think someone like Barry Ferguson or Souness for that role, because I wondered more about the idea that a lot of thinking with their heart rather than thinking with their head. You know, the idea of I would love to see more like domestic talent in the team. I've been moaning about it for months now, but sometimes the Rangers man idea, like, oh, I heard his dad's in this Rangers club and all that sort of stuff. Like, if that goes along with quality, then great. But I don't like the idea of just signing players because they're Rangers men. I think there needs to be a bit more to it than that. So maybe somebody who has some sort of domestic profile, or at least has done it in one of these so-called better clubs for doing it, like a Brentford or a Brighton, who in recent times have kind of shone through as the kind of the gold standard for bringing through youth development and stuff like that, and buying players at a cut price. But unfortunately, the Brighton idea has already been tipped by Tony Bloom's involvement with Hearts. So I don't know, someone of that ilk, someone who's part of a group of clubs. You see these, whether it be the City Group or something like that. I think that's what we need to try and get into, is that idea that we have something to offer teams that we regularly qualify for European tournaments and stuff like that, and therefore when players come on loan to us or when they get developed through us, that they'll have a chance to play European football and put themselves on that market, similar to like what Salzburg or not Salzburg, sorry, Strasbourg do for Chelsea, where it's like, well, now
David Weir has actually gone. Ironically, that's where he is now, isn't it?
Yeah. Get him back. Just join that group, and then just a wee movement of employment rather than a change of employment.
No, it's an interesting one. It's classic Rangers. We'll see a lot of names. We'll see a lot of links. It'll probably none of those and come completely left field, but we'll watch this space. As we said, got another 10 minutes or so to try and cover the Braga game here. Nothing's changed on the pitch. As I say, we're a bit more excited now, a bit more feel good around the club. That toxic thing's gone, but we all watched the Livingston game. We all sort of sadly got through the Livingston game, I think we need to say.
Sadly, we did.
How do you approach this Braga one now? Do you have an eye on Falkirk on Sunday? Do you just think, right, put a back five in and try and survive? Do you have a go? What's your tactical thinking here? Because I've got no idea. I've got no idea what to expect, and I've got no idea what I would do at the same time. We need to win this game from a European perspective, but it's kind of done as well in some sense. So what's your thinking now?
I don't know. I think that for me, the best option would be to sit in and try and catch these teams on the break. But in order to do that, we're going to need to play with intensity and have some players that will actually match their players for pace and strength.
Doesn't sound like us, does it? Doesn't seem like a Rangers team these days.
So if you're going to sit in basically from the outset, I would be sitting in the stands thinking that it's more likely that they're looking to do some sort of damage limitation, which for me would be sad if we're doing that at home against Braga, who on paper are a team that we could go on and beat. But it could be a stuffy Walter Smith-esque kind of performance in Europe where we sit in and try and do something at corners or some sort of set piece or whatever. But I'm not expecting, I know I said at the start that I would expect us to go on and win, but I'm more optimistic of the idea that this obviously isn't a team that's performing great domestically, like we spoke about that on Sunday. And I think that there are players that they've got of quality that have played all over Bundesliga. I'm just looking here, João Moutinho, he's been playing Braga Europa. What a player he is. But there's lots of players there that you would have recognised, and some of them are like obviously pretty talented that you would think, I imagine that they could have the potential to do us damage. But I reckon that we seem to do well against the Portuguese clubs, and I don't know whether or not that is just by chance, or whether or not it's that the play styles don't really add up. I know that they got beat by them 2-0 at home, and they actually looked like quite a decent team. So I could just be selling them short and thinking, oh well, they're seventh in the league, that must mean that they're terrible. But they could be doing the opposite of what we are, which is they are focusing more on trying to progress European because they realise that the league's done, so therefore they're putting all their eggs in that basket. Yep. So we're in a position where we're not quite in a title race yet because we're 9 points adrift, obviously, with that game in hand. We've not won in Europe yet. And it's whether or not, do you push? Well, I mean, if I'm Danny Rule, I'm not pushing. I'm not risking I know we spoke about before, we don't actually know what the starting 11 is, the best starting 11.
Yep.
But if I'm pushing with, on paper, what is my best 11 to go and start that game, knowing that we're going to be playing Falkirk on Sunday and a must-win, I don't know if I'm risking 50-50 players for that. I think I'm putting on the lesser players to try and get minutes. I'm putting on players who haven't necessarily got that opportunity yet, and I'd be making plenty subs regardless of the result just to keep fitness levels. But I'm not.
There's a very good comment here from Kimberly, which I think is very true to how I'm feeling about this. I don't really care about the result on Thursday, to be perfectly honest. Obviously, I want to win. Obviously, I think it's important to win for financial and to try and get a bit of respect in Europe, obviously, because we don't end up with 0 points, which is actually a real possibility right now. But you just want to go to Ibrox and be entertained. And as Kimberly says here, I just want to enjoy watching Rangers play again, feeling like we deserve our wins and be able to celebrate success instead of feeling like we're treading water through the league. I think that's really accurate because, it's been tough going to Ibrox this season, as it has been for a few seasons. But this season especially, the product in front of your eyes is rough. As a podcaster half now, it's tough to talk about certain games. It's tough to try and cast your mind back to, that was a good moment. I like that bit of play. That was a great goal. Those are 3 phrases I've not said a lot this season, and I've done a podcast like twice a week, every time. It's just been tough. I think if they go out and maybe not so much Braga, but the Falkirk game especially, see if they win that game well, just build that momentum, because I touched on this a few days ago. We've got a tough run of fixtures here. We can't be going into all these fixtures like, oh God, I hope we just, keep it tight. The comments there, playing a 5 at the back, playing a 4-1-4-1, damage limitation. That isn't a Rangers team. That's not a Rangers style. And we need to start seeing something. It's this Rangers squad. It's not a Rangers team. And again, everyone's saying it, but just try and do something positive even before January and we get some new signings, hopefully. But I just want to see something good in front of me.
Do you know what would be quite telling is if we go out and beat Braga, right? Say for example, we go out and we nick a 1-0 and we win, but the quality is still dross. Like it's an absolutely nothing game. Are you like with that comment said? We want to be entertained. Are you still happy? Because that was my point. Was when we played Panathinaikos and when we played Pilsen, we came away for those games and we're like, those teams were dross. Like those teams were terrible and we managed to beat them. Now, I don't know whether or not it's just the kind of mindset that we're in just now and that we are playing so slow and we are playing so sluggish, but I don't even think like a 1-0 on Thursday makes people go, yes, that's us, we're back in Europe. And the only way to get any sort of enjoyment like that comment saying is, like you said, go out and doing a team and getting off your seats multiple times to celebrate the team or to get stuck in action.
Players getting some goals, getting some assists, getting some good moments. I think it's quite telling that the Rangers Twitter page today were put a post about the 3-2 Braga game. Hagi scores, Aribo gets that wonder goal. I was looking at that tweet with like tears in my eyes going, remember that team? Remember those moments? Like we just don't have that team to love just now. And as you say, the best way to do that is going out and battering Braga.
Or watching a good game.
I'm not going to bet on it, but yeah, exactly. See a 3 each in entertaining game. At least we'd come away going, it was fun. I enjoyed that. Yeah. Just something, because then you take that into Falkirk, you take that to Dundee United, to Kilmarnock, and you go, okay, I know he can score. He done that against Braga. He done that. Whereas right now, again, we can go through the squad in detail. I don't want to, but Ant-Man hasn't had a moment yet. Kasama's not had a moment since the Champions League. Asgard's had that one goal, which is a great goal, but it's like a moment you remember. Diomandi needs to be doing better. Raskin done better. Majovski's done nothing. Chermiti, of course, has done nothing. These guys need a moment or two just to spark something in us as much as themselves.
Yeah, and we're always looking for them to do that little bit extra or that something special that you're talking about, like a wee turn or a wee flick to then break through, and we talk about this great moment, this great goal, and then we build on it. But it's just who, if you had the betting slip in front of you right now, who would you put down as like first goal scorer? Who would you put down as someone to score any time or
I'm Braga striker, to be honest, right now. I can't think anyone else scored. No.
It's hard. Like it's really, really hard, and that's sad. But the other thing about it is that we are like, I think that Braga's in Europe in general for Danny Rule is a bit. I'm not saying it's a free hit because I think there's a lot to play for, but I think the damage had already kind of been done before he came in. So this is a chance for him to showcase, like, right, well, next year going into Europe, here's how I would like to set up different from domestically, and maybe show the players who are there that are in his plans for next year, albeit I hope that's very, very few of them, but then show them that this is the way I would like to play, or at least show the fans that this is how I would like to play. And then we get an understanding of how we look to be competitive with a better squad, with a stronger squad. But no, I would be I'd be lying if I didn't think that we had the opportunity to go and put the first couple of points on the board on Thursday. I think there's a good buzz about the place, and I think the fans being in full flow will get behind the team, and I think that can sometimes just be enough to put the opposition off. It might not be the thing to spur us on.
It's been well documented the Europa packages and tickets haven't sold very well, understandably, I have to say. But at least now with the toxic side of things gone in terms of Thelwell and Stewart now following Martin away, there's no distractions now. There's not going to be a halftime fiasco. There's not going to be the banners. There's not going to be the person X, person Y get to France chance that we've heard all season. It's going to be back to team. If they go 1-0 down, that might change. But we'll be in full voice. I'm expecting a bit more sort of tickets to be sold because of the news and all this kind of stuff. Just helps to feel good across the place. If you don't have tickets for the Braga game, there is a competition. Very clever segue there, if you spotted that. There's a competition on our X page to win tickets. All you have to do is retweet a tweet and subscribe here on YouTube, which you should be doing already, obviously. If you're already subscribed, you just have to retweet. So very easy. That'll be announced on Wednesday. Could get a couple of free tickets for the game, and what a good game to start after the Thelwell and Stewart era has finally closed. Hef, we'll leave it there. Thanks as always for joining me tonight. We'll be back on Thursday post-match from Ibrox. It'll be myself and Craig, and it'll be freezing, so please tune in for my sake. But we'll see you there. As always, thanks for joining us. Cheers.